Have you ever met anybody who wants to be treated with disrespect? No, you never have. So people want to be treated with respect, but it's not just the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them.
Welcome to Vibecast, the podcast that dives deep into the heartbeat of workplace culture. I'm your host, Kristi. Join me in conversations with extraordinary leaders as we unravel their experiences, both positive and negative, that have impacted workplace culture. This podcast is more than storytelling. It's about actionable insights. Are you ready to transform the vibe at your workplace? Let's go. Today's guest is Gregg Ward, and he knows a thing or two about respect. And not just the kind Aretha Franklin sang about. Growing up with a dad who was a sports writer for the New York Daily News, he learned a ton of leadership lessons straight from the legends of football, boxing, and the Olympics. Those values of hard work and respect have shaped his career. And lucky for us, they're now shaping workplaces everywhere. From building a groundbreaking NYPD training in the 80s, to coaching Fortune 500 leaders and writing best-selling books like The Respectful Leader and Restoring Respect, he spent over 25 years helping organizations create cultures that win with respect. I can't wait for you to hear more. All right, Gregg, well, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you. This is going to be, I feel like I keep saying this with each guest, and I actually love it because I think each guest has such a unique story. And so I almost find myself starting out like this episode's going to be a little bit different today, but it truly is. And I think the reason is because everybody that has been my guest has such a unique story that's brought them to where they are today that ultimately has had an impact on how they positively impact the vibes in the workplace. And so that's where it's super important for people to hear the stories behind where people are at today, because it is such a journey and it's not a linear line, and yours certainly isn't. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to kind of diving in.
My pleasure. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. So as I do, I like to start out with every guest and just asking how they would define a vibe. What does it mean to you? What does it look like to you? Just help us define it so we can ground our conversation in that.
I think about some of the organizations that I've walked into as a consultant, as a coach, as a trainer, and sometimes you can just feel it the moment you walk through the door. It's the way people look at you. It's the way people interact with you. And if you get this sense of warmth and welcome, that's vibe. That's vibe. Or if you get this sense of, oh, we must follow process and procedure, do security, and do things according to the letter of the law, that's a completely different vibe. And if you get both of those together, because I do work with some very large corporations and government entities, and if you get both of those together, then that's, two thumbs up. They've got the warmth and the welcome, and they've also got the legal stuff down. So that's how I would define vibe. It's a sense of how you are treated from the moment you walk in the door.
It's like those micro moments, right? It's like, what even is like the signage on the door to when you walk in? Does a security guard greet you, or does somebody at the front desk greet you, or is it self-service, right? Like, I think we forget sometimes about all of the moments that cross somebody's path as they're entering a workplace that send a message without even saying anything, right?
It is so true. It is so true.
Yeah.
And recently I was walking into one of my clients is a big hospital group. And I was walking in onto their property, and there was a really interesting sign there. And it says, we know that coming to this place can be very stressful for many people. We're going to do the best we can to make this a stress-free experience for you. We hope that you would, we work hard at that. And sometimes we too get stressed out, and we hope you will return the favor. And I'm like, dang, That is a very cool sign.
For
I
sure,
was
because it's
very
like
impressed.
setting the expectation as you walk in to like frame your mind around what
Yeah.
to expect and what they expect of you, right? So it's very clear.
Yes, they implemented that right after COVID began because, as you know, it was very serious and a lot of things were happening. People were going to the hospital and didn't know what was happening to them.
Right.
And people were, there's an old saying in my organization that when the going gets tough, there's truth that the tough get going.
Yeah.
But when the going gets tough, people get tough on each other. And so when you're in that kind of healthcare environment under enormous stress, patients are not necessarily at their best. And so they decided, and it got really bad during COVID. So they decided that they were going to do all of their facilities had this sign as you entered the facility. Very cool, right? I mean,
Yeah, it just
yeah,
sets the tone right off the bat. I love that. Why
yes,
why
yeah,
hide it, right? Don't keep people guessing. Just make it
yeah,
very clear.
right. Or don't pretend it's not happening
Right.
because it is. Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, that sets a tone right there and a vibe, right? If you just pretend like something is different than what it actually is, that says so much without saying anything at all.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so you have this really cool thing that you're doing today, but before we get there, everyone has a story to tell and a journey from which got them there. And you have a very unique story and a very I think just heartfelt and deep and just a lot behind it that brought you to the place that you are today. So I'd love for you to share a little bit of your journey of what got you to where you're at today and kind of the defining moments behind that journey that have led you to really truly believe in your heart of hearts that creating the right workplaces is your life's work. That's really what it is, right? And so
Yeah.
yes, just tell me all the things.
I'll try to give you the short version because the long version could go on for a very long time.
Perfect.
I actually wanted to be an actor, writer, director, and producer in theater when I was a kid. My father was a journalist, and I wanted to be a writer too. And I eventually found my way to theater school and had a great time and learned a lot. And then, of course, like every other aspiring actor, I moved to New York City to become a starving actor. And sure enough, I was starving, and I took a temp job at the City University of New York, and I was offered an opportunity to help the New York City Police Department develop a training program using theatrical techniques and improvisation to help train police officers and their supervisors on how to manage what they call EDPs, emotionally disturbed persons,
Oh,
and in the
wow.
public spaces. And so starving actor always says yes to every job offer. And we were able to build this incredible training program that was very, very effective using live theater and improvisation with police officers. It was very professionally done. We really worked hard at it, and it just became an enormous success. And it was the first time in my life that I realized that my art for art's sake could actually have a practical use and make a difference in people's lives in a very real way. And so that began my journey. And eventually I moved to the UK. I founded my own professional theater company, and we toured Europe, but mostly the UK, doing classic American dramas, Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller. And I also wrote plays and directed plays, and we won some awards. We were very, very fortunate. And at the same time, I was still doing this work where I got hired by British police departments to do this same
Oh.
kind of work. And I also got hired by Shell Oil to help them do investigations into fatal accidents on oil rigs. And how do you handle oil workers who have just seen their best friend killed in an accident on an oil rig? I mean, and so we improvised during the investigations, and it was just fascinating work. And eventually I returned to the United States. I was also working as a journalist in Europe before I came back, like my dad. And one of the things I got to do, which was so cool, and this was supposed to be the short version. Sorry.
Keep going. It's fascinating. So make it as long as you want.
All right. I started to hear something really crazy's going on in Berlin. This was the fall of 1989. And I asked one of my editors, I was working for a number of newspapers. I said, "Can I go to Berlin? I want to go to Berlin." And they said, "Okay, you're gonna have to go the cheapest way possible." So I did. I took hovercrafts across the channel and trains.
Oh my
And
word.
it was just incredibly cheap. But I got there and I covered the fall of the Berlin Wall. And
Wow.
it was an
That is
extraordinary
super cool.
experience. And if you'll excuse me 1 second.
Yeah.
I have one day I'm walking around and people were smashing the wall and breaking it up and tearing it down. And I was interviewing people all over the place. And I realized, heck, there's plenty of it lying around. So I just picked up my own piece of the Berlin
that is
Wall.
really cool.
It's really small. There's nothing to it. And there's no there's one little piece of graffiti. There's one little piece of graffiti on it. And I can't prove its provenance. I could have picked this up out in the street, but no, it really is the Berlin Wall. And it's just not worth anything. I can't sell it because I can't prove anything about it. But to me, it's priceless. And eventually I came back to the US and I took a job with a nonprofit company that uses professional theater to do training, mostly in hospitals and schools, about societal issues like drug abuse and alcohol abuse and domestic violence. And we got a commission by McGraw-Hill. This is the early 90s to create a program on diversity in the workplace when nobody was doing this work. And we did it, and it just took off like a rocket. Just absolutely exploded. A very good play and then interactive discussion with the actors. And it went really well. But I was working on a nonprofit salary. I couldn't live in New York City. I had a young family, just couldn't do it. And so I left and started my own organization, moved to California. And I've been in California for nearly 30 years.
Wow.
Doing this work, still using theater as a training tool in my coaching and my consulting work. And so that's the one through line through everything that I've done, but it's been very circuitous. And where I got to where I am now, I'm now the executive director and the founder of the Center for Respectful Leadership. And that's because I was doing all this diversity work, which was very successful and went really well. The challenge for me was I am a straight white guy. And when most people think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, they put straight white guys in a negative box.
Right.
And so,
yes.
And that's just human nature. I understand why they do that. And yet, even though I am an expert in the field, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. The principles are alive inside of me. I knew that I was always going to hit that barrier of how people perceive me. And so I got some coaching from a very good colleague of mine. He said, I understand your challenges. What is it about DE&I that really makes a difference for you? What is it? And I said, it's respect. It's respect. He says, that's what you should focus on. And so I started doing a lot of research. I've learned a lot about respect. And that began about, where are we now? I would say that it began about 15 years ago. And then I wrote a book called The Respectful Leader. It's a fable, a business fable, a short story,
which is the best kind, right? Because
thank you.
Theory, it's nice to see models and theories, but like it helps you put it into practice, which is probably why this theatrical learning, right, is so helpful because it's actually storytelling. And so people can find a relatable moment and then apply it that way versus like, oh, wait, let me take this theory and then go apply it to my real life. But drawing the line between those two can oftentimes be very, very, very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I wrote the story. I've been a writer my whole life. I'm a good storyteller, and I wrote the story to be a cracking good story with good, believable characters. And it got picked up by John Wiley and Sons on spec. I just sent it in as a possibility, and they published it. And Amazon named it. This is what's crazy. My whole life is like, how did this happen? Amazon named it the best business book of the month the day it came out. And we sold 8,000 copies in 1 week. It was insane. And then about a year later, it won a very prestigious award, the gold medal in best business fable in the Axiom business book competition. And I was so pleased with myself that I decided to frame it. And there it is on my wall.
So, you know what? It's like you've surprised yourself because it seemingly is so natural to like write about these things and do these things because
Right.
you've like your passion has met your profession. And then you're like authentically acting out what you believe in your heart of hearts, right? Which I think is
Yes.
so I think that's so counterintuitive to what some people believe to be true and what they can do in this world. And so when you start to win these things, you're like, I'm just being me, right? I'm just writing about
Yeah.
things I'm passionate about. And how
Yeah.
could I win awards? Like, this is just who I am. And
Yes.
that is a very, very big testament to like living out the things that you believe in versus what you think you should do, right? Of like just being you. But there was a journey to getting here. And so you have a TED Talk called Confessions of an Accidental Killer. And while that seems very dark, I think there was so much that you shared in your TED Talk, which I'll encourage everybody to go listen to it. That has probably was maybe like missing from this journey of to where you got to
Right.
today. So
Right.
talk to me about like what it is, and then also
Sure.
like what got you to kind of that in this thing more of moral injury come to light, right? Because it didn't just
Yes.
happen right after this accident happened.
No. No. And the reason I didn't mention it in my recitation of my circuitous history is because it was always in the background. And essentially what happened when I was 18, I had a car accident, my responsibility, and my high school sweetheart was killed. And it was an accident. And yet, as you might imagine, it completely changed my life and my perspective. And I went through very, very dark times. And it quite frankly, it was only because I went to theater school that I actually was able to process effectively some of the horrible, horrible things I was going through. And coming to terms with regret and shame, enormous guilt. And yes, I was going to see psychologists, but many of them were Freudian, and they just weren't particularly helpful. But being in a theater school where you are being encouraged constantly to express your authentic and real emotions, well, it was kind of the most expensive yet most effective therapy I could have ever
Sounds pretty
had.
healthy to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And my classmates, including Julianne Moore and Jason Alexander and Michael Chiklis, they were super understanding and helpful to me. So it was a great environment. Yet at the same time, it was this this thing that not many people go through, although more people than you would imagine. Every year, the estimate is something like 30,000 people accidentally kill someone in the United States. Yeah, most of them are car accidents, but some are related to guns, and others is workplace accidents on construction sites and things like that. So, and we talk about the people who died often, and we honor them, but we don't often talk about the people who caused the accident, and because there's a shame there, there's guilt, and people don't know how to react to people who are that way, and we don't know how to react ourselves. So the reason I'm bringing that up is in the background to everything I was doing, including the work I did as a professional in theater, the plays that I wrote, the plays that I chose to direct or be in. Each one of them was about understanding the nature of being a human being, and how to overcome guilt, shame, regret, and not only that, but how to transform it into something good, and something that makes a positive difference in the world. And it's only when I began to study something called moral injury, you brought that up before,
Yeah. Well, you
that
shared
I
it with me during our first conversation. It's just such an
yeah.
interesting phrase, yet makes so much sense when you started to articulate it to me that I had never
Right.
heard before.
Each of us has a moral code that we are raised with. Either it comes from our parents, our church, our culture, whatever. And if we break that code, even if it's legal, I didn't do anything illegal when my sweetheart was killed. It just I had an accident, and so I broke my own moral code, which is thou shalt not kill, and which is something we are all taught. And so there's that fundamental confusion and fundamental upset at the heart of who I was. And I think this is true of most people in my position. So what I eventually, after understanding a greater sense of it, I realized that all the good work I was trying to do through my training programs using theater, on focusing on DE&I, focusing on respect, all that good work was slightly disingenuous, because really what I was doing, I think subconsciously, maybe consciously, is trying to prove to myself that I am worthy of living a good life, that I am worthy, even though I caused this horrible thing, that I'm actually a good person and I'm worthy of respect and trust. So once I understood the nature of moral injury and I started to do good things, not to make myself feel better, but to leave a legacy in the world the way my girlfriend who died would have done, then the moral injury started to clarify itself. And I could understand why I was still feeling discombobulated, because I was doing all these good things. Why didn't I still feel better about myself? Because I was making it about me. I needed to make it about her. And so I started a scholarship at our high school in her name, because she wanted to be an artist. And every year we award some money to a young woman who wants to be a professional artist. And that is her legacy. And I am supporting what she would have, the difference she would have made in the world if she'd lived, or would have wanted me to do if she could have told me. And that's when I began to realize, yes, I can make a difference without this moral confusion inside of me. I can make a positive, powerful difference. And so that's kind of driven everything that I have done in my life.
How did you come to this? How did you seek out moral injury in the first place? Like, how did that come to light for you? Because I think many times we start to get in our heads about certain things, or oh, it could be this, or we hear something from somebody and then we're like, oh yeah, it could be that. And then there's almost like an influx of too much information to sift through to understand what we're actually feeling or what's driving a certain behavior or emotion.
That is a very powerful and astute observation you just made. I learned about moral injury because I volunteered to coach veterans who were coming home from conflict overseas. And it was they who introduced me to the idea of moral injury. And when I shared with one of them that I had this accident, and he said quite forthright, he says, "Oh, you're just like me. You've got moral injury going on." And I'm like, wow, okay, let me research this. And interestingly enough, the Veterans Administration really does lead the nation in studying this thing called moral injury because let's be honest, suicide rates amongst veterans is among the highest in the country. I mean, that's the group. And so it's only natural that the VA would pay attention to this. And they've got a lot more understanding. There's treatments for it. There's all sorts of things that can be done now. In the old days, we used to call it, shell shock. And I think PTSD and so now we're really getting better at understanding what this is all about. And once I studied it, I said, "Yep, that's me. That's what's going on with me."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And so how does this kind of play out in the work that you do today, right? Like let me back up a minute. How did that change the work that you were doing? Because you were successful in what you were doing, right? But
Yes.
there was
Yes.
still this piece that had whether or not it was missing, it was maybe a little empty, right? Or it was
Yes.
just this gap. Um,
Good way to
so
put it.
how did that, once you identified that and started working through that, how did that change the work that you were doing? And what did that look like? What was the impact of, the work that you could then continued to do after that was identified? And like, I imagine you still continue to work through it, right? I don't know if there's there ever is an end necessarily, a beginning for sure, but not an end.
That's true. That's true. You could certainly manage it more effectively. In the early days, there were times where I was completely laid out. I couldn't function at all. I was so overwhelmed. I would go days and ideate all sorts of not good things. And but eventually, I learned more how to manage it. And once I had that understanding and insights around moral injury, what actually changed with me is I had more compassion and empathy toward leaders in organizations who are characterized. Now, please forgive me. This is a technical term
That's all right.
used by Dr. Robert Sutton at Stanford University, who wrote a wonderful book about this topic. But when you're dealing, there are some leaders at the top of organizations who cannot be described any better than to call them assholes.
Yes.
And when I first started doing this work, before I got an understanding of moral injury, I was very intolerant of them. And if I was hired to coach them, I would beat them about the head and really let them have it both barrels. And once I understood more about moral injury, I think we all carry the scars of whatever happened to us from our parents, our growing up. We all carry those scars and we react to them and behave in different ways. So I became much more compassionate of those leaders of giant organizations who are rewarded because they get things done. Regardless of who they roll over, they get things done. They serve shareholders. And if they behave like assholes, oh, well, people have to deal with it or leave. And so that's a very common theme in most companies. It's you put up with those people because they're so good at getting things done and bringing they're rainmakers. They bring money in.
And
so
there's
we
nothing
tolerate
illegal necessarily,
right,
usually about what
right,
they do, right? It's not
right.
illegal, immoral, and ethical. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah. And
They don't do
it's
well
not,
for the vibe. That's for sure.
it's not an illegal to be an equal opportunity jerk to every
Totally.
single person. It's not.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you are driving away really good people. And what really changed is with the millennials and Gen Z. Millennial and Gen Zs graduated high school, college, or graduate school during the Great Recession. You may remember the Great Recession, and there was a media meme going around that they were all quitting during the Great. You remember the Great Resignation? That the financial press were saying, "Oh, they're all these millennials and Gen Zs. They're all spoiled. They're just looking for more money." That couldn't be more true. What they had realized, they graduated during the Great Recession. They saw their friends' parents lose their jobs. All three of my kids had friends whose both parents lost their jobs, had to give up their homes in the housing
Oh,
crisis. So I live in California. You
yes,
do too. It was huge here. It
it
was
was
massive.
huge.
And so
Mhm.
our Gen Z millennials, they're highly educated. In fact, they're the most educated in terms of degrees in history. They are not stupid. And they saw that employees are now just commodities. And when time gets tough, out they go. So there's no loyalty anymore. There's no golden handcuffs or anything like that anymore. And you could get terminated at the drop of a hat. It's at will employment. And so they thought, why? And the Great Recession and then COVID hit, and they're like, why am I sticking around in a job that I cannot stand? I want to be in a place where I feel valued and listened to and respected, and where I can make a difference in the world. And there are plenty of companies that make a lot of money that do not do that. And so they said, yeah, I want something better. I want to be treated better. Now, when I was growing up, I had no expectation of being treated with respect whatsoever. And I wasn't. I was treated like crap in my first jobs. But I was told, if you don't like it, get over it, or there's the door.
Right,
And back then, unemployment was really, really high.
right.
And so there were people out the door who wanted the jobs that I hated. But
Mhm.
things have changed. And
Yeah.
so now, right now, unemployment's, everything's kind of frozen because we don't know what's going on. I mean, there's bigger things going on in the world. But at the end of the day, they learned that putting up with a toxic work environment, they're not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. It's not worth it.
That's
It's not worth it.
such a great thing to mention about generations, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so many times there's this focus on like, oh, they're just lazy or they don't want to work
Yeah.
hard or they like and it's I had this conversation during a training I did a couple weeks ago of like the difference in generations and somebody brought up this exact point. It's like what these generations saw and experienced with their friends' parents, with their own parents, created the belief system that they have about work. And so they've decided to make it different because they saw the devastation of it versus, oh, you're just lazy because you're Gen Z, whatever, right? Like like that has nothing to do with it. It's what the media has chosen to highlight. But the reality is they're making decisions based on what their experience has been, which is what we do in life. Like if we had to get real, this is what we do in life, right? We have these experiences like you just talked about, this experience of this accident, and you made choices in life and you created belief systems in life based on that experience. And
Exactly.
that was probably a highlight of trauma experience and
Yeah.
maybe some of
Yeah.
these, people friends losing their homes, that's your safe space. That was traumatic. And so they've now created these, experiences and belief systems and decided to make different decisions. And yet we're just telling people they're lazy.
Right. Right.
So while, and
Right.
granted, there's
Right.
lazy in every generation if we
Sure.
want to find it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if my three millennial children are not lazy, they're not slackers. They're incredibly dedicated, hardworking. They've married millennials who are really smart and hardworking. And so the stereotype doesn't fit. And it's just our lazy media. I used to be a journalist, and my editor used to say, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's controversial, it's going to be the first thing. So of course, let's all malign an entire generation. People will click on that.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And people love a good story, good or bad. They love a good
Yes,
story, right? Like,
that's true.
but yeah, I think it is very, that is something that we fail to recognize when we're talking about generations in the workplace. And I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but that there's experiences that were economic that have created situations and beliefs
Exactly.
and different behaviors that kind of come from that. So,
Exactly.
yeah, which is kind of going back to your situation, right? Is you had this situation in your life that created this belief system and these experiences that you went to theater school and then you kind of lived out like the trauma that you were living with.
Correct.
And then it brings you to kind of today, right? This Center for Respectful Leadership. And so I really want to hone in on like that word respect, because it probably means a few different things to different people, especially when you talk about leadership. And people might feel a certain way when they hear it. So what, like, ultimately we know how you came to that, which I think is amazing. And I think that's very honest of you to know who you are and what ceiling you might hit when you're working in the diversity world, right? Like, that's just the reality of how people see it. So you came to this respect thing. And so help me understand like what it means, how you define it, like what this looks like. I want to hear all about it.
Okay. The most important thing that I want us all to understand is that respect and disrespect are feelings. They are not the result of rational cognitive thought. So there's been a lot of research done about how emotions are generated in the brain. And if I treat you in a way that you consider to be respectful, let's say you prefer to be, I don't know if you have a PhD, but let's say you do. And if I call you doctor, then you would probably feel respected. But if I just met you for the first time and called you Kristi, and your expectation is to be called doctor, then you would feel disrespected. So if I treat you with respect and what you consider to be respect, a part of your brain called the threat center is bypassed. And instead, your amygdala, which is the center of the limbic system, will basically give commands to release a certain hormone into your bloodstream. It's called oxytocin. You may have heard of it. It's called the love hormone, the bonding hormone. So if I treat you with what you consider to be respect, you're going to get a little hit of oxytocin. And your neocortex, the newest part of your brain where all the thinking goes on, the words, the music, the math, it interprets that feeling as the result of my behavior. So then you will put on, if I continue to treat you that way, you're going to put on a pair of sunglasses, and on the sunglasses it says respectful person. And you're going to see me every time we interact. You're going to see me through these sunglasses. And so that's what we know as confirmation bias. And so that's great. Our relationship will be really, really good. But let's say I didn't treat you in a way that you consider respectful, and you felt disrespected by me. It could be just a tiny little thing that triggered you, something I did or said or didn't say or do, and it triggered you. And your amygdala releases a whole bunch of hormones into your bloodstream because you do feel like you're under threat, especially if it's behavior that happened to you before. You're on the lookout for it. And so then you get these feelings. Your neocortex says, "Ooh, I don't like these feelings." It's a result of the way he treated me. And then, of course, if I do it again, you put on a different pair of sunglasses that say disrespectful person on the lenses. And every time you see me, you're going to interact with me with those sunglasses.
With that like pretense.
Yes. Confirmation bias. So even though I may be behaving to everyone else, I may be behaving perfectly normally and respectfully, to you, you see it as disrespect. So again, what I try to help, especially leaders who are in the highest levels of the organization, you've got to understand that people, have you ever met anybody who wants to be treated with disrespect?
Right.
No, you never have. So people want to be treated with respect, but it's not just the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them.
But that is so hard.
Yes.
Because you don't know what people are thinking, right?
That's
like, we're not mind readers. So
that's right.
How
you need to ask. How would you prefer to be addressed? As doctor or Kristi?
Yeah.
What would you prefer? You need to ask. You need to listen. You need to turn on your emotional intelligence switch. You need to learn how to read the room and sense and look at people and listen to them and get out of your own head, because leaders are so much in their own head of what they're trying to get done, and they've got their strategy and here's what we're going to do, and they're not reading the room, how people are responding, or they just drive through no matter what. So what has happened to me as a result of my accident and my understanding around moral injury, to get back to your
Yeah.
original question,
No, it's all good.
is
This is a prime example of it's not linear, because we're not having a linear conversation because it's not linear, right?
It's not linear. It's not linear. At the end of the day, I've become much more compassionate of those assholes I get hired to fix.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to try to listen to them and understand them more and not beat them up so much.
Yeah.
Although I do beat them up sometimes a little bit.
It's fine. That's fine. And but okay, so this is all great, right? But how do you like sometimes, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I have expectations when I interact with certain people and I'll walk away from some interactions like they were so disrespectful. But then I'll turn to another person or talk to a friend and they're like, what are you talking about? Like, because they just have different expectations. That's fine, right? That's the way the world works, is we're all wired slightly differently based on those experiences that we've had, et cetera, or our belief system or whatever the case may be. But how do you then start to turn some of those assholes that you talked about, right? And understand, hey, start here just to start turning the table so that people start to believe something different about you, that you are respectful. Because my guess is they don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to be an asshole to everybody I interact with today. They have actually really good intentions. It's the impact that they have is not what they intend.
That is it. So that once I get them to understand the neuroscience of respect and disrespect, there's usually kind of like I didn't see it that way. Okay, let's talk about the impact that your behavior is having on other people. And they often say, well, I'm getting shit done. I'm getting stuff done. They often say I'm getting stuff done. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
and I say, yes, you are, but at what cost? What is your turnover like? What is the conflict level like? What is it doing to your team? How much are people burning out? How quickly are they burning out? How many people are pushing back on you or just saying they're done with you and leaving? If it's small, if it's negligible, then there's probably no reason for anybody to call me. I usually get the call when it's bad. And what I often say to my clients, who are usually the heads of HR who are calling me, I say, gosh, I wish you'd called me like 6 months or a year ago when this stuff began, because now it's that much harder to work with these people because they're kind of dug in and very defensive. So I'll give it a try. At the end of the day, if a person is willing to be curious about, once they learn about the nature of the psychology of respect and disrespect, the neuroscience, once they learn that and they're willing to be curious about how their behavior might be negatively impacting others, and be willing to be open to that feedback and insight, I can turn them on a dime. And there are certain practices that they can do, such as being the first to respect. Don't assume because you're the boss that everybody's going to treat you with respect first. Go out of your way to be respectful first in the way people want to be treated. What's wrong with being friendly? What's wrong with being outgoing and helpful to be? I know you're busy. We're all busy. Everybody's busy. So take the time to reach out to people, to check in on them, learn what's going on in their lives. People will feel honestly respected if you just take that little bit of extra effort to be interested in them and not just see them as a means of getting your goals met.
Yeah. This idea of going first is really seems so simple, right? And yet people don't like to be first movers. I've experienced a lot of this in my consulting practice of, wow, just go first? Like what's getting in your way of, well, I'm busy, or I'm the boss, or I'm this, or I'm that, or they've disrespected me. I'm like, I don't care. Just go first and change it. And they're like, huh? They look at me like I'm speaking a different language to them. But it's like being intentional and going first could go so far. And yet, like, it's so hard for people.
It does.
It's wild.
And do you know there's an old saying out there that respect has to be earned.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that's true, but you're going to be surprised at who should be doing the earning. It should not be the new employee who just came on board and has to prove themselves to the boss. Rather, it's the boss who goes out of their way to treat that new employee with respect. Because what happens when they do is that employee respect is reciprocal. You treat me with respect the way I expect to be treated. Unless I'm a sociopath, and there's a few out there, I'm going to treat you with respect in return. And so it's very infectious. Respect can be very infectious. But if you sit around waiting for people to treat you with respect or earn your respect simply because you're the boss, you've got stripes on your shoulder or something, forget it. That's not going to happen. But our research tells us that if you make a mistake, which we all do, and we're all human, and you're in a leadership role and you honestly go and apologize and you make no excuses and you try to repair the damage that you did, respect for you will actually go up. It's when you minimize your behavior and say, that's no big deal, or you ignore it and you pretend you didn't do it, that's when respect for you goes down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very, very wild. And I just encourage people to like just try it, right? Like it's like going to the dressing room to like try on a new pair of
Try it on.
jeans. Try it on.
Try it on.
See what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
I know.
Yeah.
The barriers that get in people's way of doing the simple things is quite astonishing, I will say.
They are invested. They're invested in who they are. They will often say to me, "Hey, I've gotten to this very high level of success here. Why does this matter?" And all I can say is, "Well, you're getting complaints. You seem to be having some impact that maybe not be what you want." And there are a few who say, "I don't care," and I say, "Got it. I'll send HR my invoice and we'll be done.
We're done."
Yeah. We're done.
Yeah.
I can't help you if you do not want to even explore the possibility that you could change for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I would almost push to say, not push them, but push to say that like, is there a level of joy in your job that you're doing if you are seeing that people are feeling disrespected? Like, can you feel joy? And don't you want to feel joy in your role? We spend a lot of time working with others, and you want to be joyful as you leave the workplace too. So I would just, it's probably a whole nother podcast episode, but can you feel joy if you're not leading with respect? I don't know.
I don't know. That's a great question. That's a very powerful question you've just asked there. It is another it's another podcast.
Yeah, it's another podcast with lots of other scientific research behind it. What is joy?
Yes.
How do you feel it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What hormones are being released in your body when you feel joy? I'm sure there's lots of things. But
absolutely.
But as we kind of wrap up today, because I feel like we could continue to talk on this subject because it's so much to talk about, and it's simple yet so complex in the workplace. As you think about your work that you've done for yourself, for your girlfriend from high school, for others in the workplace, what if people listening could walk away with one thing that they could simply go do to start improving the work vibes or start improving the respect in the workplace, whatever that is, right? That is so important to you. What is that one thing that doesn't require a budget or a group of people to vote on it and blah, blah, blah? They could just go do themselves, because I think it's those small moments that matter most to start moving the needle. What is that one thing you would recommend?
The one thing I would recommend, we at the center call it respectful listening, but you would know it as reflective or active listening. Essentially, what I encourage everyone to do, it's very simple. When someone is giving you their opinion, and it might be opposite to yours, and there might be a little passion and a little bit of emotion involved. It could be negative emotion. When you seem to be getting pushback, just say to them, Kristi, what I think I'm hearing you say is, and you paraphrase what they said without adding your own spin, and then add in the emotions that you seem to be getting from that person. Kristi, what I think I'm hearing you say is X, Y, and Z, and you seem to feel pretty strongly about that. Have I got that right?
Okay.
9 times out of 10, they will say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. And if you study neuroscience and you understand how the brain works, when people feel heard, they calm down. They are more willing to discuss, to negotiate, to work things out, but they need to be heard first. And that's why we call it respectful listening. It's very simple. Just reflect back what they said, but you've got to be careful not to add your own spin, because people listen with the intent to respond, not the intent to understand.
I just trained a whole group of leaders on this, and that is really hard to do because you want to get your words in, especially if you're a talker. I'm a talker. And so sometimes this can be, I try to practice it on my kids a lot because they challenge me at home, and it's, I can work out the kinks before I do it in the workplace. But it's hard to do. So yeah, maybe you could put a Post-it on if you're doing a lot of Zoom, you put a Post-it on your computer screen, or you have a little trinket that you fidget with or something like that, that just is a physical reminder of how you should, listen. That also means not multitasking. It also means not making sure the inputs, when it's a serious conversation, that the inputs are kind of shut off, put your phone on do not disturb, whatever it takes. But because there are a lot of distractions in this world that keep us from listening to understand.
And which can be perceived as disrespectful. I hear this all the time from my clients. They say, I'm in a meeting with my boss. We're supposed to be discussing something really important. They need to make a decision, and their head is buried in their phone. It's come on.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole multitasking myth is just a myth.
It is a myth. Not real. I know. Well, we could probably do a whole podcast on that too. And disrespect. So maybe there'll be part 2, part 3. I don't know. We'll figure that out.
Sounds good.
But thank you so much for being here. Gosh, this was just the nuggets of wisdom that came from this, and this whole concept of respect. I think if you can get it, if you can try it out in the workplace and you let it bleed into your personal life too, what a magnificent gift. Truly.
Thank you.
And bleeding out into the world. So you are doing some amazing things, and I appreciate you for that and for sharing your story. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Gregg Ward reminded us that the vibe of a workplace isn't random. It's shaped by respect, listening, and the little choices leaders make every single day. It was incredible how he shared openly about his tragic accident early in his life, how it shaped his understanding of the concept of moral injury, and how working through that experience gave him a deeper lens on respect, empathy, and what people truly need from their leaders. From his early life trauma to his journey in theater and diversity work to the neuroscience of respect, Gregg really showed us that personal stories, compassion, and even tough experiences can transform how we show up as leaders. So here's the deal. Respect isn't just a great idea. It's a feeling, and it's necessary to get the best in people. So stay curious, stay courageous, and keep vibing, my friends. If this episode inspired you and you want to see how you can take the next step to creating a better vibe within your organization, I'd love for you to download our complimentary 75 Vibes worksheet. This is a simple tool to create a habit and mindset around creating great vibes in work and life. The best part, it's simple and it works.